The FDA has authorized a protein-based COVID-19 vaccine from Novavax for use in people ages 12 and older.
Yeah, the FDA also authorized updated mRNA-based vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer last week. And here to talk a little bit more about that and other vaccines to consider this fall is 9 News health expert Dr. Payal Kohli. Dr. Kohli, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
So talk to us about these new vaccines.
Yeah, I'm excited for fall. I mean, the leaves are turning, the weather's getting colder, but it means it's time for a vaccine. So there's 3 vaccines now, as you mentioned, the 2 messenger RNA vaccines, and one is the Novavax protein-based vaccine. And we really are encouraging people to go and get them, because if you look at last year's data, only 20% of eligible adults got their vaccines, and only a third of nursing home residents, which are the highest risk people, were up to date on their vaccines. And so the reason we think it's time to update the vaccines is because the virus has changed a lot. We had this big COVID wave over the summer. We're expecting a bigger wave over the winter, for reasons that respiratory viruses spread more efficiently. So it's important to get it. So the 2 mRNA vaccines are against the KP2 strain of the virus, and the protein-based vaccine is against the JN1 variant. Now, here's the kicker. Those are both yesterday's variants. The one that's currently circulating is actually the KP3 variant. So the vaccines are still a step behind, but certainly much more progressive than the ones you got last year. So it's time to get updated.
What about flu vaccines?
So flu this year we're looking at what's called a trivalent vaccine. So 3 different strains, 2 strains of influenza A and 1 strain of influenza B. Now, if you're over the age of 65, you actually get a special flu vaccine. So you get either a higher dose flu vaccine or you get a flu vaccine with something called an adjuvant, because your immune response is not quite the same. So to tickle your immune system, they actually either give you a higher dose or they give you something to bring out the immune response. But we've seen that we probably only need to cover these 3 strains this year, not the quadrivalent like we had last year, because that 4th strain has really not been very active in the southern hemisphere.
So for people who, might not like needles like myself, we're wondering about the timing of all of this.
Yes.
That we only have to get it once. When's the best time?
Well, and you can get them both together. So the data on efficacy, at least very limited studies, but what we think is if you get them together, it's not going to make them less effective, and it may not increase side effects, although that varies on an individual basis. I know for me, when I get multiple vaccines, I tend to have more side effects. But what I would say is mid to late September to early October. So I like to say flu before boo. So by Halloween, you have to have gotten that flu shot. Now, for me, for example, I have a wedding coming up at the end of the month in September, so I'm going to time my vaccine mid-September because I know that my immunity peaks 2 weeks afterwards. And for COVID vaccines, we know the peak immunity is about a month after, and then it kind of starts to go down. Now, if you've had COVID within the last 3 months, you could probably put off your COVID vaccine for about 3 months so that you can really sort of trick your immune system into getting a boost when you actually need it and when your native immunity starts to wane.
And you also wanted to talk about the RSV vaccine, right?
Yes, and so here's the other thing. If you're older, there's other vaccines that you also need to get, and fall is a great time to think about it. So the first is the RSV. That's for people who are over the age of 75 or over the age of 60 with other chronic health problems. If you got that last year, which was the first year it was out, you don't need one this year. So it usually lasts about 2 years, so it's not an every year, it's an every other year kind of vaccine.
Right.
There's a Pneumovax, which is a pneumonia vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine, that you need to get if you're older as well. And then the shingles vaccine is for people over the age of 50. So flu and COVID for everyone over the age of 6 months. And then if you're an older person or someone with chronic medical problems, you need to think about RSV, Pneumovax, and maybe shingles as well.
Got to squeeze this in really quickly, Dr. Kohli. Aside from the vaccine, what are other good ways to keep us healthy as we enter the season?
Yeah, so I really like to think of fall as sort of a new beginning, because the leaves are shedding, the seasons are changing, and so that is a great time to think about your preventive screening as well. You got your kids back to school, You did their back to school physicals, right, Corey? Yeah. And so now it's time to think about your back to school physical.
I think I need to get my back to school physical,
Which is the preventive screenings and getting your blood work done and just kind of getting your body recovering from all the fun we had over the summer, really getting ready for winter season, getting our immune system in shape, focusing on sleep, on stress relaxation, and really cutting down on all the fun that we had over the summer.
Sleep, exercise,
eating
right, get outside. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, let me tell you. Dr. Kohli, thank you. And don't forget, you can find more with Dr. Kohli at 9news.com/Dr. Kohli. Chris?